Hi, I'm back for the second half of Chapter 6, A Bewitching Offer. It requires a lengthy explanation, Morina said. Please, have a seat. The witch waved her hand toward the three boulders, and they transformed into large stone chairs for the villains to sit on. So far, the witch was very impressive. You see, the witches of this world have always had a long and unpleasant history with the people who ruled it, Morina explained. Before you arrived, there were rumors about an impending witch hunt. Those fears were all but confirmed when the masked man became emperor. We were certain that once he executed the royal families, it would only be a matter of time before he ordered our extermination. But luckily, that all changed now that you've taken his place. If the masked man saw the witches as a threat, why would we view things any differently? Captain Hook said. Because the three of you are much wiser than your predecessors, Morina said. Why become enemies when we can have a glorious opportunity to become allies? The villains side-eyed one another. They weren't pleased with where this conversation was going. For your sake, I hope you're offering us more than friendship, the Queen of Hearts warned. Morina smiled and her eyes grew wide. They could tell friendship was only the beginning of what she had to offer. Of course, I'll cut to the chase, she said. Recently, I convinced the other witches that the only way we could escape the pending genocide was by leaving this world. We need a place to ourselves where we won't be controlled by fairies or ostracized by humans. So I formed a plan for the witches to invade and conquer another dimension, known as the Otherworld. The villains were instantly intrigued. The Otherworld, they asked in unison. It's a world very similar to this one, but far greater, Morina explained. It has hundreds of countries, thousands of cities, and billions of people. There are structures and machines you could only dream of, and more land and sea than we could ever need. The best part is that this world operates entirely without magic. With no fairies to limit us, we would be unstoppable. Her passionate description was hypnotizing. Still, the villains wondered if it were too good to be true. How can you prove it exists? Captain Hook asked. Take a look for yourself, Morina said. The witch's eyes suddenly lit up like the headlights of a car. Morina magically transferred images of the Otherworld into the villains' minds, and their eyes glowed as brightly as hers. Visions of London, Paris, Tokyo, and New York City flashed before their eyes. They saw the Eiffel Tower, the pyramids of Giza, the Great Wall of China, and the Golden Gate Bridge and the Taj Mahal. The villains had never seen a world so grand and diverse before. The light faded from their eyes, but was replaced by the glow of desire. How do we get to the Otherworld? The Wicked Witch asked. The late fairy godmother had portals hidden all over the kingdom, Morina said, but each one is difficult to open, and the journey takes a toll on anyone who isn't a practitioner of white magic. Then how do the witches expect to cross over? The Queen of Hearts asked. As luck would have it, the two worlds are scheduled to collide very soon, Morina said. A doorway will open that will bridge the worlds like never before. Once it appears, we can charge into the Otherworld and take it by storm. The villains' suspicion grew as much as their interest. You seem to have figured it all out, Captain Hook said. What exactly do the witches want from us? A devious smile grew on Morina's face. This was the part she was most excited to tell them. The witches don't want anything from you, she said. Then why do they want to become allies? Captain Hook asked. You misheard me, Captain, Morina said. The witches don't even know I'm here. I'm speaking for myself when I proposed an alliance. The villains shared a look, each more confused than the other. Morina waved a hand over the dirt, and a fourth boulder shot up from the ground. She transformed it into a large stone throne, much taller than the other villains' chairs, and she had a seat. I had every intention of leading the witches into the Otherworld, Morina explained. Sadly, that leadership was stolen from me. Two witches with seniority, the Snow Queen and the Sea Witch, have taken the operation into their own clammy hands. But my frustration has taught me a valuable lesson. Witches are not like wolves. We do not belong in packs. Once we cross into the Otherworld, we'll be fighting one another for dominance until there's only one of us left. So I've begun a new plan for after the witches conquer the Otherworld. The villains shared a smile. Morina's plan was starting to make sense, and they liked where it was going. You're going to betray them, the Wicked Witch of the West said eagerly. Precisely, Morina said. The Snow Queen and the Sea Witch plan to cast a spell on the late fairy godmother's granddaughter, a powerful young fairy named Alex. They believe if they curse her strongly enough, they'll be able to turn the girl into a weapon and use her to vanquish the Otherworld. I'm not convinced this will work. I believe there are more traditional ways of invading a new territory. You want our army, the Queen of Hearts said. Morina clapped her hands excitedly. Exactly, she said. I say we let the witches be our pawns. Let them invade the other world and weaken its defenses. Once they've both exhausted all their resources, we'll charge into the other world and steal it from them. We'll destroy Alex, the witches, and whatever is left standing in our way. It was the most thrilling and lucrative offer the villains had ever received. They were all fidgeting in their seats at the thought of the conquest. However, they still didn't know if Morina could be trusted. How do we know you won't betray us in the end, too? Captain Hook said. We've already been deceived once by someone in this world. We won't let it happen again, the Wicked Witch said. Unlike the masked man, I don't bite off more than I can chew, Morina said. We'll divide the other world evenly among us. We'll each have our own territory twice the size of this world. Surely that's more than enough land for each of us. Time is of the essence, so if you're interested, I need to know now. Do we have a deal or not? The villains huddled together to discuss the situation privately, but Morina could tell they had already made up their minds. They were creatures of greed and couldn't refuse. You have a deal, Captain Hook said, but if you disappoint us, we will end you just like we ended the masked man. Morina laughed loudly. You think you killed the masked man, she said. Of course we killed him, the Queen of Hearts said. No man could have survived the fall. Yes, but the masked man isn't a man. He's a roach. Morina said sharply. Even if you cut off his head, he'll turn back the very second a throne is left unattended. We haven't seen the last of him, but don't worry, I have something that will bring him to his knees should he try to sabotage our plan. And what is that? The Wicked Witch asked. The villains were curious, but not nearly as curious as the masked man himself. He had very few possessions. What had the witch stolen? Not what, but who, Morina said. I've kidnapped his son, a boy named Emmerich. The masked man has a child? Captain Hook asked. Not one he knows about, Morina said. But should he ever cross us, the boy will stop him in his tracks. The masked man was so shocked he dropped the revolver. He no longer felt any of his injuries or the anger boiling inside of him. He forgot all about losing his empire and his desire to kill the villains. All he could feel was adrenaline and his heartbeat. All he could think about was the son he never knew he had. I should return to the witches before they get suspicious, Morina said. The witch stood from her stone throne, and with a snap of her fingers, the boulders all returned to normal. The villains were buzzing with anticipation. If they could invade the other world today, they wouldn't hesitate. When will the invasion take place? The Queen of Hearts asked. We want our soldiers to be prepared. It won't be long now, Morina said. When the time is right, we'll strike. I'll be in touch. The witch covered her horns with her hood and disappeared into the trees. The villains ordered the Winky soldiers to escort them out of the woods and practically skipped back to the northern palace. The masked man was still so astonished. He stayed in the bushes long after the villains were gone. Having a son presented him with a world of new opportunities he never thought possible. If he played his cards right, the masked man could regain much more than just his empire. He could salvage everything that had been stolen from him. And that ends our chapter. Our next chapter will be chapter 7, The Captain and Her Crew. I'll see you guys then. Bye.